This is the American Roundtable. So much in store for you. Good morning, I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickland.
Well, an FBI mole story hits the presses with us, an American Roundtable. What happened during the 2016 campaign? Well, we're going to tell you. Also, the New York Attorney General resigning over bombshell allegations of sexual misconduct and battery. CNN taking a dive in the ratings. We'll tell you why. Also, a story about France being upset at the United States. Why? We are going to tell you why. And the NRA has a new president. And we'll even get to something that may help regrow your hair. That and a whole lot more in this edition of the American Roundtable. Well, Bill, let's jump right in. This FBI mole story is quite troubling. Why don't you fill us in on this?
Yeah, it's reported in the Wall Street Journal that the FBI had a mole during the campaign. And my whole point on this is if there was a mole that was giving the FBI information and there was something about Russian collusion, they could have busted Trump from day one. But here we are a year later and still no evidence. So there was a mole, so what was he saying and who was it? And this is worse than Watergate. This is way past what happened at Watergate.
Do you believe there was a mole? Do you believe that?
Yeah, I believe it because the dark state has its tentacles every place.
What is this dark state that you're referring to?
Well,
folks?
you know, you have all these connections. Like I brought up Mueller and John Kerry. They went to the same private school. So these guys are buddies. So where do you think Mueller's allegiance is going to be? It's not going to be towards Trump. It's going to be towards the Democrats. So, you know, there's things that go on behind the scenes in Washington as well as other places, and that's what this is all about. Let's talk evidence. It's been a year since Mueller's investigation, so let's see what he's got. And apparently he's got nothing because everything else leaks out of Washington, but nothing else.
So what you're saying is you think it's a setup. That's your thoughts.
Well, what I think is there's nothing really, no Russian collusion, because as I say, I totally believe that it would have been leaked by now, and certainly there has been no leak on that, except for private conversations in the White House, which is rather rude and really uncalled for. But nothing that really matters here on the national stage, and that's the Russian collusion.
Well, you know, this is American Roundtable on Tough TV, where we keep it real and keep it tough, on Channel 38 in Orlando and also the Tough TV network. If you want to find out more about this great show, check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/USA Roundtable. This mole story is not going away. We're going to tell you when we find out more about it. Now, another bombshell. The New York Attorney General, a big critic of Donald Trump and a big critic of Trump's alleged infidelities with one Stormy Daniels and others, is now caught in a web of his own making, Bill.
Yeah, the 4 women have come out and said that he was physically abusive towards them. And his point is, well, it was consensual. So maybe they were playing some games or role-playing or whatever. That's his contention. But now the women are saying there's a problem, that's not how it actually happened.
The 2 women who spoke on the record, Michelle Manning Barish and Tanya Selvathranam, both said physical abuse escalated over time, including choking and hitting, and that Schneiderman was also a heavy drinker. That may have played a part in it. It only took 3 hours for Schneiderman to go from being the Attorney General to a has-been. 3 hours, Bill. Now, the New Yorker publishing this story, 6:47 p.m., and then 3 hours later, he's done. More on this and more on the American Roundtable on Tough TV.
Welcome back to American Roundtable. So, Donald Trump is always talking about the fake news. And it seems like when the Schneiderman news came out, the same day, that night, CNN's Anderson Cooper didn't even address that. And that was the big story of the day. So I can see where Trump may feel that there's an issue with fake news. And like my friend said, just this week, they should change the name from CNN, Cable News Network, to PNN, Porn News Network, because of how much time they're spending on Stormy Daniels and her attorney.
Well, you know the news business is all about making money. And so, which it wasn't many years ago. I mean, it wasn't until the 80s that the news business decided that it wanted to make money. News organizations were always kept separate, and they were self-funded by the network, so they wouldn't be beholden to sponsors. But these times have changed, unfortunately, and what you have now is tabloid journalism. And what sells better than boobs? Stormy Daniels has boobs. And so, therefore, CNN, maybe they should call it BNN, the boob news network.
Whatever, Al.
I mean, it has some boobs on there doing the news anyway.
Whatever, Al.
So anyway, CNN Anderson Cooper also ignored the Eric Schneiderman scandal that we just spoke about. Preet Bharara, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, being mentioned as a potential replacement for Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, who resigned in disgrace as New York Attorney General, as we just reported. But host Anderson Cooper failing to mention the Schneiderman scandal when Bharara was live in his studio. Why would he not mention a bombshell story like that?
Seems like somebody's trying to protect somebody. And, if it's news, it's news. And, you and I have discussed several times about, Trump trying to outlaw people, talking about, take away press credentials. And, you just can't, the news people are the ones that are the guardians of our freedom. But when you have somebody slanted like Anderson Cooper, which is a straight out example, that is a problem.
It is, and I just don't think the news is really reporting much anymore. If it's not tabloid, I mean, you get a straight scoop here on American Roundtable, but that's just because of who we are. But you're really not getting that from the news networks. You're getting fluff, Stormy Daniels, Trump bashing, some occasional North Korea news, and something from the Middle East that's been going on long before we were born and will continue long after we're gone. So my thought is, if it comes out, I mean, it's blatant. If you ignore the Schneiderman story when talking to his possible replacement, shouldn't you be held up for some type of journalism ethics charges?
Well,
That's my thoughts.
Well, who's to say that there's really ethics in the news business anymore, Al?
Well, that's the problem. There are here at American Roundtable on Tough TV 38 and the Tough TV Network, I can tell you that right now, but I think that we need to talk more about what's happened on these cable news networks, and it's not just CNN. All these cable networks, 24-hour news networks, have their slants. I won't even tell you all the slanting that's done on MSNBC, and there's even some on Fox. So what do? Do we go back to the half-hour news blocks that we grew up with? At least it goes through journalistic editing. The stuff that's coming out now is there's a constant barrage of information that's mostly meaningless.
Well, the world is full of stories right now.
I thought you were going to say it was full of something else.
No. There's so much stuff going on right now. 30 minutes is just not going to cover it all. But you have.
I disagree. We went through the whole entire Cold War, World War I, World War II, and Walter Cronkite was there telling you everything you needed to know in a half hour.
Well, maybe we don't have journalists or TV commentators that had the skill of Walter.
That's the mistake. They're sitting right here.
Well, I can tell you that there's so much stuff going on that when we go through to look at what's going on in the world, I mean, there's a bunch of them that we can't cover. And we do a half-an-hour show.
Yeah, but we do it once a week. And it's a great show. Check out more about this show, American Roundtable, at facebook.com/USA Roundtable. This is the American Roundtable on Tough TV 38 and the Tough TV Network. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the American Roundtable. So happy to have you here. Please let your friends and family know about this great show on Tough TV 38 in Orlando and Tough TV Network. Find out more at facebook.com/USA Roundtable. The NRA's next president is one Oliver North. I'm sure you know that name from his longtime commentating standing at Fox, which he's going to be leaving for this gig. Also, in the 80s, he was a leading figure at the Iran-Contra trials and scandal that happened during the Reagan administration. And now he's going to be taking the helm as the next president of the National Rifle Association. That's right, the NRA is now reporting. Wayne LaPierre the vice president and CEO, saying this is the most exciting news for our members since Charlton Heston became president of our association. And so now, in these times, I can think of no one better suited to serve as our president. Would you agree with that, Bill?
I think it's a great marketing ploy by the NRA. You know, the NRA didn't have a face, and it's portrayed to be this monster in our society. And Oliver North, people know him, and they trust him.
People like him. He's likable. He's a patriot.
Right. So it's a great deal for the NRA, and I think that now that they see a human, a person that they can connect with, and you see Oliver North and our NRA, then it's a great fit, and I think it'll benefit everyone.
Well, I think the NRA's been on the ropes lately with the shootings that are happening in schools across the country, calls and marches for gun control, taking guns away. So I think that it's a good idea to get a high-profile president in there. We haven't had a high-profile president of the NRA since Charlton Heston, when he said, the gun would only be taken from his cold, dead hands. Remember when he does that with the rifle? Remember that? That was great.
Well, how can you argue with Moses?
I don't think you can. So North is now 74 years old. Time flies, doesn't it, Bill? He's a member of the NRA board, and the Washington Post notes he attended the group's prayer breakfast over the weekend at the annual convention. Here's a quote from Oliver North. "I want my grandkids to say that Granddad was a person who taught me how to fight the good fight," North said. "You see, that's the most important lesson of all. We're in a fight. We're in a brutal battle to preserve the liberties that the good Lord presents us." North first, of course, became a national figure while serving on the NSC under Reagan. He was convicted in 1989 of obstructing Congress on other charges for his role in the sale of weapons to Iran and the diversion of proceeds to support the right-wing Contras in Nicaragua, per The Hill. A judge eventually dismissed the convictions, so they were politically motivated, it looks like. And here's something that Trump's NRA remarks garnered. Former French President Francois Hollande has two words for President Trump's claim that gun-toting Parisians could have thwarted ISIS attackers at the Paris' Bataclan concert hall. He calls it indecent and despicable. Harsh words from the French president. What are your thoughts?
Well, when you have people that, first of all, in your country, or people that and they die by any terrorist means or dies in any way, you're going to be ultra sensitive. And
yes.
And looking at things objectively, maybe Trump had a point, but when other people have been hurt, you just don't kind of like make things worse. So that was Trump's opinion, and the French president, he was offended by that, and he has the right to be offended. So it's very difficult, like I say, when people die in a car wreck or anyway, that you have to be sensitive.
So do you think Trump wasn't sensitive in those remarks?
Yeah, I think he could have taken it a little bit more tact if he had something to say.
I think you're right too, and I think France is an ally, and I don't know if you should be necessarily going after France like that. According to the president of the Survivors Association, no weapon would have changed the outcome because there were suicide bombers wearing explosive belts who were going to blow themselves up in the places they were attacking. We'll have more for you on American Roundtable on Tough TV right after this. Welcome back to the American Roundtable. I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickler.
Bill, let's talk a little bit more about what's going on. The NRA under attack. The NRA is feeling pressure. The NRA is feeling so much pressure that they're enlisting the help of Oliver North to come in as their president. How does this work? What do you think the effect's going to be? I want to talk a little bit about more where you see the next year. Do you think gun control will be passed in some form in the next year?
Well, it's obvious that whatever's in place now is not working. There's been a lot of people that have been killed, school attacks, so things are going to have to be changed. Is it putting armed arm teachers or police in each school.
No, I don't agree with the armed teachers. I think that's a bad. Now,
Or-
some more armed personnel. Yes, I do believe that a presence can thwart attacks, but it has to be a strong presence. You do not need to arm teachers. I think that's a ridiculous argument. It's not necessary.
Well, just the fact that it's stated, oh, there's police that may rotate from school to school, so no one really knows. That might be a deterrent to somebody that wants to go in and shoot up a school because they don't know if there's a policeman there with a gun. They don't know. So I think a lot of things can be done marketing-wise to throw these people off. But it's like in France, if you want to kill somebody, you don't need a gun. You can use a knife. Or what's happened in England. They don't have, they have strict gun control, but people are stabbing people.
Right, but I think really what the argument there is the body counts will be lower if it's an attacker with a knife versus an attacker with a gun.
Hey,
And so even if someone does go crazy, they're not going to be able to kill as many people. Unless they're Bruce Lee or something like that, with the fancy moves. But, there aren't too many of those around. So I think that we're at a crossroads in America where we either have to decide that gun rights are more important than the rights to people to peaceably gather in various spaces, right? That's really the argument, wouldn't you say?
well, that is what the argument is. That is the problem, and I'm looking for solutions. To me, a solution would be maybe more background checks or a cooling off period to where people can't grab their guns if they're all upset. But if you have fanatics, they're going to figure out a way to get a gun, and not legally. They could grab a gun off the street. So it's the intent of the person or the ideology that ISIS has that really influences people.
Yeah, I think that this is a story that's going to keep developing, and we're going to keep following it. Now let's turn our attention to something a little fun. The Titanic, right? Famous ship that went down in 1912, and they made movies about it. They've written books about it. So it's an industry. Titanic is like an industry. There's no more famous shipwreck than the Titanic. Well, the Titanic is actually going to float again. It just won't sail anywhere. NPR is reporting that Chinese are actually working on a full-scale replica of the Titanic. It's being built hundreds of miles from the ocean. And this is a man at the helm of the project. It has an unexpected excuse. He's missing deadlines. It was supposed to be done last year. We're still working on it. He said the movie didn't mention how big it was, says Su Xiaojun, referring to the James Cameron film that inspired him to build a replica and a countryside resort like Titanic Land or whatever the heck they're going to call it around it. But wouldn't he know from the blueprints how big it's going to be? Or do you think that's just a cop out? He says he didn't know that it was Titanic sized, even though it was called the Titanic.
Well, this is an example of the Chinese ripping off American technology. Then I don't think America's really got anything to worry about. But I mean, think about it. You got a Titanic. Yeah, it's between two cities with 40 million people, but there's no water around it. So what are they going to do? Build a big moat? They're going to build a big lake and fill it up with water? I mean, it just seems to be, it's like having a baseball bat going to a football field. I mean, it just feels out of place.
Well, it's like the Queen Mary is still moored in California, and the people can go on there and
You're on the water.
You're on the water. So, it just got me a little chill there. But the person who designed China's Disneyland has said that we will have more visitors than them. I doubt that. This guy is making some great assertions, but he's a lot of fun. We'll see how it goes with the Titanic. And now let's talk about hair loss. Bill, you're familiar with this subject, being an older gentleman. What do you use to treat your hair loss?
Some people just aren't as blessed as you are, Al.
Well, I come from good stock, as they say,
okay,
Bill.
yeah.
And
So anyway, so what's happened is there's a new bone drug that may treat hair loss. They're finding that they have had some hair regrowth for men and probably women too, but they're going to have to do their testing, and you get to the FAA, FCC, or
FDA.
and then what's going to happen? Probably be 20 years, and you wouldn't have to worry about growing hair because it takes so long to get something approved.
I just think it's interesting that a drug intended to treat osteoporosis may actually help treat hair loss. It's not unlike Viagra. Viagra was used to treat a heart condition, and then they found out that it gave you an erection. So it had a whole new use that was way above and beyond marketing-wise and money-wise anything that they tried to do.
Just go to show you just never know.
Well, the body's all interconnected, so something that might help one thing can have other effects. Here's a quote: "The fact that this new agent, which had never even been considered in a hair loss context, promotes human hair growth is exciting because of its translational potential. It could one day make a real difference to people who suffer from hair loss," said study leader Nathan Hawkshaw of the University of Manchester in England. Clearly, though, a clinical trial is required next to tell us whether this drug or similar compounds are both effective and safe in hair loss patients. Only two drugs, minoxidil, which is Rogaine, and finasteride, which is Propecia, exist to treat so-called male pattern baldness, which these have both been out for quite a while. But both have side effects and often produce disappointing hair regrowth results. So this is a new exciting field. This is the American Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Please enjoy your Sunday, and please join us again next week when we can tell you more about what's developing through the week, both nationally and if interconnected internationally, because everything seems to be connected nowadays. I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickler.
Remember to keep it real.
And keep it tough.